Прошу. No.
Hello. I'll invite everybody from the back to take their seats as we are about to start. So hello again, my name is Sharuna and I'll be the host of today. I'll help you to go through today's agenda and introduce from who we are to what selection of the speakers we will have today. I'm very happy to welcome you on this occasion, talking about PSD2, as this topic has been circling around for quite a while now. It's one of the hot topics these days. Why? PSD2 came in 2015. It took some time to develop, and why it's important to talk about right now, as 10 days ago, on 14th of September, the main regulation and main aspects of online payments came in place that will affect over 300 million people in Europe. So talking about open banking and PSD2, it has been developed to create more cooperation, more competition, and more innovation in the financial sector. Today in the audience we have a great selection of participants. So first of all, I would like to welcome the PSD2 project team from Swedbank that came here from all across the Baltics, from Sweden, Latvia, Lithuania, and then they made the PSD2 happen at Swedbank. Among us, we will have Marius Jurgilas, who will present the regulator's approach and will share his insights. As well, we have fintechs, we have legal firms, we have tech firms that can't wait to see what's coming up next, and we have users, practically all of us, that will be affected by these particular changes. So talking about PSD2, we would say is just a number. So looking back, so what was PSD1? So it came in 2007, and actually the first year when the first iPhone was released. So looking back in the past, now we have 24 iPhone models in the market. We have self-driving cars. We have human cells being cloned. We have Uber. We have various of challenger banks in each of our pockets. That means a certain change really needed to be in the market that's developing. So that's payment sector. And we are very happy to discuss about it today. So briefly about today's agenda, we will have, after a couple of welcoming speeches from our guests, we will have a presentation about changes and opportunities. So what's really changing with this PSD2 regulation? Then after the short break, we will have Marius Jurgilas from National Bank of Lithuania talking on the topic post-PSD2 world, for us to better imagine, so what's really coming up next. And to wrap it all up, after the break and this presentation, we will have a panel discussion where we expect a lot of your participation to ask questions that really matters to you, because we have a wide selection of people that could answer to the matters that really interest you. And we will have discussion about open banking, challenge accepted, what's next. So for now, I'm really happy to invite for the first welcome speech the head of finance at Swedbank Lithuania, Remy Salters, and he's an active supporter of Rocket. But I believe before that, we should run through why it really matters for us to stand on the stage and be presented as Rocket. So as Rocket, we are not so long time ago. It's just 2.5 months, and we had some honorable achievements and then great guests coming in. So basically, who we are, we are a home for fintech and innovation here in Vilnius, fostering the ecosystem and helping it grow. So we try to turn ideas into real businesses, providing tools for collaboration and encouraging ultimate growth for the business. We consider ourselves as #1 fintech space in Vilnius because this is the place where ideas, events, and various topics about innovation circle. We are proud to stand by all of these partners that either support the fintech ecosystem, that provide direct support for startup ecosystem, they provide funding, they provide mentorship, and create all of us what we called the home of fintech. As well, we feel a great support by governmental organizations that come here to talk to businesses, provide direct support, implement the ideas into the real actions. So we are thankful for Ministry of Finance, National Bank of Lithuania, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Vilnius Municipality. So what we do, so you are in this great modern workplace, so we try to build a community of fintech startups and innovators that could collaborate, co-work, and create new projects together. We do events and programs similar like this, so if you follow our agenda, you will see that there are lots of great content that you can learn from and you can benefit from or even contribute to. And we have the innovation part. Innovation where we try to bring ideas work, and my colleague Ekaterina will explain more how we do this together with Rocket at Swedbank.
Hi everyone, and I will use the chance to thank you all the Swedbank colleagues who came here today. And as Rocket is powered by Swedbank, we all together trying every day to help innovations, to help together the fintechs here, the startups, and to search for various ways for cooperation. So cooperation for us means a lot, as we understand that there are areas where we can help, and I think that PSD2 is quite a great topic for us today to discuss how we can cooperate further. And this is like, this was a joke made by me and Sharunya, that basically what we're doing here with the power of Swedbank, we are trying to change the way how fintechs work with the bank. So maybe PSD2 is in place. Open banking is really open already, 10 days up and running. So let's not hide anymore and let's cooperate together.
Great. So now it's really a time for me to come on a stage. When it comes to PSD2, we asked this question. So what's really the, what does it really mean to you? And he said it's a constructive disruption. And the PSD2 is really around the corner. So PSD3, right? So as we said, it's just a number. So could you share your welcoming speech and your insights? What do you think about all this?
Thank you. I'm not going to share any insights. If you want to know about PSD3, we can discuss over coffee. I just want, on behalf of Swedbank Lithuania, to welcome all external participants, first of all, but also all Swedbank colleagues from home markets other than Lithuania, from Sweden, Latvia, and Estonia. I hope you're enjoying seeing this rocket space that we participate in, collaborate with, and power at Swedbank in Lithuania, and which is central to our drive to share and connect in the era of open banking. I can think of no better place to discuss open banking and PSD2 than Rocket. And we have a great program lined up for you. Without further ado, I will introduce two of our speakers. They are from Swedbank. They are from Swedbank in Stockholm. And they are Lotta Loven, who is the head of our channels management, and Leif Carlsen, who is the head of our lending and payments in Swedbank. So please, a round of applause for our two colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I must say, start with, it's an amazing place you have here. I wish I could work here every day.
Me too.
Yeah. We were given the opportunity to run the PSD2 program in Swedbank 2.5 years ago, I think it is.
Yeah, we have been co-leads during this.
So we have kind of been, that was why I picked the hair from his suit before. I tried to clean him up a little bit. Right. Yeah. But we already from start understood that this is not a compliance project. This is something totally different. And that has been the task all from start. And our leading star And some of you mentioned one of the words that we have been put very high in our work with PSD2, and that is collaboration. Not only within the bank, but also taking advantage of the opportunities and collaboration with fantastic fintechs and startups and other colleagues all over. So I hope that you will get inspired from the team here today as well, after me and Leif has spoken. I think we can jump over this one. Yeah.
So, as you were telling, the PSD1 came on for a while, and that we really thought about as a compliance project. It was about time for payments to reach their recipients. It was about information. It was about fees. But when we really started after PSD2, we said this is something really, really different. But I think we didn't really figure it out when we started how much it will actually change how we work and how it impacted the bank. And it came in the same time as a lot of new things happen in the market. So it's have also been a learning for us working in the PSD2, how we can take on these challenges. So of course, compliance, and there you can say one thing what we have learned, that different regulators see things differently. Since we're working on multiple geographical areas, we have seen the regulators from different angles. And there are a little bit different ways of treating this.
Actually, I would say that since the technical standards and the regulation in itself were a little bit unclear, the first part of our period when we started the PSD2 work, we actually started off not only with trying to understand the compliance, but from the very partnership perspective. So one of the first things we did was actually to put partnerships in production, APIs in production, and starting collaborating with some fintechs. And that was a learning phase in itself on how to deliver and structure data.
And also being a bank, we have a lot of data that has not been used to use that data to work together with other partners.
So when we last week, the 14th, 10 days ago, that didn't feel like a very big day for us, actually, because we had been prepared for so long. But having said that, it was also an interesting lesson for us to have a collaboration on exactly the same regulation with 4 different FSAs, where we can see that the direction is a little bit different in different markets. And this is something we have to deal with and learn with as well. But the Lithuanian regulators have been very in the front end. That is very much appreciated. Some years ago, we redid our channel strategy for Swedbank. And that one is very much based on what's happening around us with the opportunities that comes from PSD2 and GDPR together that creates an opportunity for open banking. And we say that we are a digital bank with physical presence. And what do we mean by that? We have, in Sweden, 200 years, and in the Baltic states for the last 25 years, been very much a part of the ecosystem in the society, building a platform. And that one is now changing, not in terms of being a platform for financial sustainability and being part of people's life, but going from manual to digital. And what does that give, being a platform? Of course, we need to continue collaborate with great partners and also being very technical ready to do that. So if we have our platform that in this case, the PSD2 and GDPR case is the digital channels, it should be very easy for us to collaborate with others and create value-added services by collaboration with partners. But also, of course, to make sure that our products and services are easily distributed.
And I think this, as you said, Lotta, that we could, one thing is to bring in product services from third parties that can enhance our customer experience or our product offering, but we can also use products for distributing other channels. And I think this is one way that we would like to explore going forward. We have been really focused right now, having our own channels, but we see we will meet our customers in multiple channels going forward. So it will be a choice of themselves where to meet us.
And this has matured already. In Sweden, we have one example, not in the PSD2 area, but our mutual funds are to a very large content distributed through a startup bank, actually Avanza. So this is something that we need to be prepared for in our infrastructure going forward, because this will increase. And I know that we already have a lot of collaborations and things ongoing in all markets. So this is how we think. And I think that how long have we been working with APIs?
Technically, we have worked a lot of structured data, but 1 or 2 years maybe externally. Yeah.
I think a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Do you know that, Oleg?
5,
6 years.
Time flies.
Yeah. So I think it's we are going from being a baby in this market to maturing.
But I think it's not just only the PSD2. We have to embrace all other things that we could serve with. And this is one of the real good examples that we will know more about otherwise. But Lotta, we have been doing other parts.
Yeah. We try to summarize a little bit on where we have been active the last years, because we have a high ambition in partnership and collaboration, and we have been running several accelerators. We have a corporate community in the Baltics serving us very well already. We have been a big sponsor of Stockholm FinTech Week, and we have done internal hackathons and have had open banking launch events in all markets. And I think this is something that we really need to continue on and growing. All collaborating between our people with guys and girls out there contributing with smartness. Because I think that I often get the question from press, aren't you very afraid of the fintechs and how will you deal with those? And I say the same thing all the time, and that is that the only way forward, I would say, for the European market is the opportunity fintechs and banks have to collaborate. Because that fintechs or banks are not the question. It's fintech and banks to meet the real threat that comes from the large players coming from China or from US, the ones that have total different muscles. So I would say that together we can be as strong.
And I think we have some proof point as well that we work together already. Around 2,800 registered users in a sandbox is one example on that. There are interactions, there are things ongoing that we would like to take it to the next level.
And the team having working with the PSD2 have been very big and all over Swedbank. The people sitting here today for you that are external are developers, legal, compliance, customer, meeting people, working with how to meet customers in new ways in our business areas, etc., etc. So there are a lot of skill sets. This is kind of sourcing all through the bank.
So with that, should we
leave over to the experts?
Yes,
Yeah.
And take us through this interesting afternoon.
So thank you for the great welcome speech. And now I would like to ask Oleg Morofeev and Astrom to come and to share the insights, or how you share the stage, to present us PSD2, so the real changes and new opportunities for the market. But you start first, right?
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I've spent more than 15 years working in the media industry, streaming media, news, editorial content, pictures, and APIs. But I've always been curious about the banking and financial industry. And I joined Swedbank in January 2018. And I quickly discovered there was such an exciting time to join this industry. First day at work, everybody talked about TPPs, RTS, and 14th of September. Now I spent 1.5 years at the bank. I know that TPP is short for third-party providers, and RTS is regulatory technical standards. And 14th of September passed 10 days ago. For regular customers, it wasn't a very big day, probably. But for us, and for everybody who works in finance, it will be the beginning of the new era for all of us. And the new thing about that is that we talk more about the togetherness. Here we do this together. We will make a shift from only distributing products and making money out of that, for creating new services with new value for customers in collaboration with partners. Huge opportunities ahead, but also huge disappointments if we fail to deliver on these new conditions. Since the 14th of September, doors are open. If you have an idea, build a new service, ask for a customer consent, and deliver those services. If you have an idea and believe in it, build it and come to us, and we can deliver it together. Obviously, not everything is so shiny and easy. Not for the banks, not for tech companies, and not for supervisors and regulatories. And not easy for customers either. They don't want to hear about PSD2. They don't want to learn about the legislation. They want frictionless services and improved finances. Obviously, two models are colliding now. It's the traditional one, long tradition, and all of us are used to it, and then the new one that's built on partnerships. Some think that one model will win over the other. We believe that there's a new model for all of us involved. Customers will enjoy the freedom of sharing data with providers that they trust, and they can use any combination of providers. But they need to learn who to trust and who will make the data useful for them and who will abuse it. For us, we will enjoy new opportunities to reach beyond the product experience, collaborating and implementing services based on partnerships. A small customer, a small company doing sales will not acquire the product card acquiring anymore. They will probably need an integrated checkout, automatically linked to inventory, bookkeeping, tax reporting, cash flow, and financing opportunities for growing. And as Lotte and Leif said, we've been working on partnerships. We've been trying it out for the last few years. It's learning for us, and it makes us better, and we improve, but it's still very early stage for this. Partnerships also requires the sustainable business models for the tech companies. Needs to provide joint value for us and the partner and the customer. Our own infrastructure and our own technology also needs to be updated for this new era. All incumbents will probably look for new ways of developing our own infrastructure to be able to make the most out of this new situation. And it's not a solution that leads to upgrade hardware, get new software. It's more about a big shift in our modularity and use plug and play and work with other providers to deliver new services. And regulators, they will probably have the biggest challenge in these times. They need to sort out the signals from the noise and the customer, and to navigate this shift. They need to balance the customer protection, innovation, opening up the markets for new entrants, and keep the structure, while there might be strong forces pushing them in different directions. And banks are used to value protection very high. If we build a house, we put doors everywhere, and we probably lock the doors. A fintech company, a Silicon Valley company, might come from another perspective, where they leave the doors open, or perhaps even don't even install doors. Now we must find this way going forward together. Keep the right level of security, but at the same time emphasize the customer experience. So this is the numbers that have been aggregated in August for TPPs around Europe. It's about 170 companies so far that can build and deliver financial services, build on banks' infrastructure without agreement and without cost, and they can do so with every bank within Europe. We expect the number of TPPs to go up over time. And you might recognize this image if you were awake. We also expect the number of APIs to go up. We started with PSD2, and that's the first step of delivering collaboration in a regulated way. Now we're looking forward for APIs for different parts of the bank, breaking down our offerings and our services into modularized bits and pieces. That will make our products and services available in customer journeys and ecosystems beyond our own channels, with the customer's consents, of course. In the future, bank services will be a natural part of customer experience in channels outside of our bank. Exactly like Google Maps is a foundation for location-based services. Bank integrations will be possible through APIs. For the customer, it's a big benefit, and it will be a great opportunity to make banking in the right context. APIs will be the foundation for this. Our belief is also that it will be the fast-growing way of interacting with the bank. The shift to mobile first happened about 5 years ago. And the increase in API traffic and third-party channels will be something we watch and monitor and work with on a daily basis and respond to the demands from customers and partners of services that they need. It's been almost 2 years now since the first version of our sandbox, and we are 10 days into the PSD2 era. And wrapping up, based on my own experience, 10 years ago, we delivered a video-on-demand service where our customers could watch any video they like, whenever they like, and on whichever device they wanted. Today, it's barely unthinkable to not have video on demand wherever you are or whenever you are. Whenever you tell your children that, TV schedule, 10 years ago, someone else decided what you could watch and when. That sounds like a silly idea, and nobody wants to go back. I'll expect the same thing to happen within this area for the next 10 years. Thanks, Oleg.
Thank you. Can I have a clicker, please? Yep. Hi, guys. My name is Oleg. I have a privilege, actually, to work with a team that built a technical solution. Next. Team that built a technical solution behind PSD2 APIs. And there will be just 2 slides, so you will not fall asleep, hopefully. I will not tell about how difficult it was or challenging. Lotta mentioned it was 4 markets, 4 regulators, actually all European regulators, and 4 home regulators. It's been a lot of TPPs across the Europe. It's been almost every Friday European Banking Authority have been issuing a clarification, and we had to redevelop and redo what we have done over the past weeks. So it's been really agile development. So it's been tons of fun, and I would never believe, because before that I've been working with Swedbank's digital banking, so I've been working with the internet bank, mobile bank, and I thought that this is fun. And I thought that compliance projects are super boring, and this is what you don't actually do, because that's some stupid reporting. And that part of my career, I think it was very entertaining, because you will see later on what sort of challenges and opportunities I see later on, but even the past was entertaining, because we were trying to understand, to predict how the future will look like in order to design today's solution that we have deployed. And of course, we failed miserably several times, so we had to redo it because there were interpretations. Then the reality kicked in 10 days ago, and we had to fix some things, but it's been fun. It's been fun to predict the future. All right, so the first part is that from PSD2 API, from the service provider point of view. And you can see here a sort of a magic triangle. And this is like a super simplified picture, because in this picture we have only customer, we have bank, and we have third-party provider, payment provider. This is a simplified picture, because you need to have financial supervisor, you need to have certificate provider. Basically, it will be a multi-dimensional picture, which we don't want it to go into. But basically, there are, I would say, just for the case of simplicity, there are three main players. And I think that this will be our challenge, our market challenge, not Swedbank challenge, but market challenge from now on. So let's start. From a customer point of view, as I think both Pierre and Lotta mentioned, that for a customer it will be tricky, because he will need to figure out where to enter his credentials, who he trusts, what sort of, how his data will be used. And right now, I think we're in the state in terms of a customer consents, we're somewhere where internet had been with cookies around 7 or 10 years ago, where you've been just automatically had cookies or accept all. And I think that the pretty much next step that we're going, I hope that pretty much next step that we're going to have, and that will simplify life for all of us, is that the whole market will need to come up with an idea on how to structure that. So you would be able to distinguish that data is needed just to operate the service. This is something for create targeted offers for you. This is something to, I don't know, create a better product experience, yada, yada, yada. So basically, you will need to understand in a normal way, not in a legal way, sorry guys, not in a legal way how, what the customer consent means, but in a very, very practical way. As today, in some sites, you understand cookies. If you don't understand that, then there is another Cambridge Analytica scandal maybe not behind, but in front of us in several years, and trust is destroyed. Customer still keeps money with the bank, still have his account with the bank, and he still trusts the bank. But then he interacts with the bank through the third-party payment providers. And then when something is not working, customer is confused. Whom he should address, how the customer complaints will work, and imagine how they will work in a practical life. If there is a TPP from France, if there is a bank from Estonia, and the customer from Italy. So how in the world he will actually get either money back, or he will understand where his data went, because it will be about collaboration of the bank, it's about collaboration of a payment provider, and these guys do not have a contract between each other. It's collaboration between regulators in different markets. So it's a very interesting business model. Again, it's not very clear how it will be solved. Once it will be solved, we will gain a trust, we as a market. If it will not be solved, there will be no trust. And the last part, it's relations between bank and third-party payment provider. Yes, before that, 2 years, 3 years ago, when you had to have a business with the bank, you had to have a contract. No other way. This is how we structure it. No more contracts. So right now it's a legal framework that says that there are two things that need to be in place. A license, so Lithuanian Central Bank should issue a license, and there's a certificate. And I don't know how many of you guys have had experience working with the certificates in your businesses before. Raise your hands. 3, 4, 5. All right. Basically, if you look at the European landscape, there are very, very few countries who have managed to deploy certificates technically and legally in a mass scale. One of those countries is Estonia, and luckily we're operating in Estonia. And luckily at that time I was also part of the Swedbank. And I can tell you that was a nightmare, because the certificate infrastructure is very sensitive. Certificates have a very strict legal processes, so there are no flexibility there whatsoever. So building that infrastructure to work on a European level, it's going to be a funny exercise. So more or less, we will need to build a new business model that is not built on the contracts, but built on a quite complicated technical infrastructure, which can ruin a trust between a bank and a third-party payment provider. So more or less, we have a trust issue, or we have a trust challenges, we meaning as a market. And this is from my point of view, from a service provider point of view, this is the biggest challenge that I hope that I will be working with for a couple more years. Then hopefully things will settle, and the new business model models will appear from that. So it's not only technical paradigm, it's basically social, it's legal, and it's technical as well. So that's service provider point of view. But then luckily we were also consuming APIs. So we were also acting as a TPP. And yeah, we were the first bank, to my knowledge, in Europe to do that. We were actually not even in a rush. We thought that everybody is working on it, and that was actually true, because I would say a couple of weeks later on, our friends from Green Bank did the same thing, so they launched it as well. So that tells that basically the banking sector in this region of Europe is not that bad. And I think that but I would say we had an advantage, because that's our home turf. We've been dealing with it for a couple of years from another perspective that's just been on the previous slide. So we knew a lot of details how to do that. But even for that was super difficult, because there is the technical standards that exist. So if you're now going into any European event that is dedicated to PSD2, then it's all nice. PSD2, same technical standard. Bullshit. No technical standard. It's very loose. Even though there are several working groups that are trying to make it much more narrow, and they do not succeed, because the technical infrastructure behind is very complex. There are very different market practices, business models, etc., etc. So there is no one technical standard for PSD2. 4 years, PSD3, maybe 2, 3, 4 years, maybe. Certificates, mentioned that. We had a problem with that. We've been dealing with certificates for years. We're owning a company, or partly owning a company that is issuing certificates. We had issues to get those. And there are some legal gray areas still, because PSD2 came into the light pretty much around the same time when GDPR came into light, and there are some clashes right there. There are some clashes with anti-money laundering, well, not clashes, but unclarities in terms of anti-money laundering law. So there are still some things that there are still some challenges also for third-party providers, payment providers, to operate in that market. Good luck to all of us, again, because I would say that the last part also can damage the market, because it's a trust here. So coming couple of years are the critical to remain the trust. And it's only possible if, as Per said, if we do that together. So seriously, right now, We are the team, and if you're a third-party payment provider, if you're licensed, if you have a certificate, then please approach us. We're tailoring our communication. We're trying to support all those of you who already have licenses. Of course, we cannot tailor it for all 3,000 developers who are just registered, but those who are ready to do stuff, we're trying to work in a fairly proactive way, because that's the only way to sustain the trust and actually to keep that business model rolling. That's it.
Yeah, so we will have questions afterwards in the panel discussion as Oleg will be participating. And before the short break, we have a small job for you to do. So as you've heard some comments of what PSD2 means for our colleagues or in the market, so what PSD2 is for you. So we really ask you to go on menti.com, enter our code, and basically just write a couple of keywords that come to your head when you think of this word, of the whole change. And later that will be a nice jump to our panel discussion. And I believe Gediminas, who will be moderating, will really comment some on that. So now it's a break time. So we see the first word, trust. So make sure you put some keywords. You can bring a couple of words, and then we will come back after 20 minutes. We are a bit ahead of time, but let's save time for the panel discussion and all the questions. Aš muzikos negaliu paleisti. So let us come back. I will invite people from the back to come and take their seats for the further program. Thank you very much for your active participation. There are more answers than people came to the event, so we are happy that some of you even shared a couple of your ideas. So Gediminas, who is managing the panel discussion after the presentation, I believe he will pay attention to what you mentioned. So if you allow me to read a couple of the most significant ones. So what PSD2 is for the audience today is data, is money, is future, is Kevin, collaboration, customer value, open regulator, new ways of challenges, opening up, a few pearls among trash, and similar. So Gediminas, make sure you read all of them, get all the nicest ideas, and we will get back to that. So now we have upcoming presentation by Marius Jurgilas. I went out somewhere. And he will be talking about post-PSD2 world and the changes that will come and his approach from the regulator's point of view. So Marius, please join me here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So once again, my name is Marius Jurgilas. I'm from the regulator, and I'm a board member at the Bank of Lithuania, which is a financial markets regulator for those who don't know what Bank of Lithuania stands for. It's not a bank, it's a regulator. And the biggest news for me relating to what the survey said, today, that for you, PSD2 is all about the data. If I pretend I didn't notice money, it's the biggest news for me is that did you get that news that you don't have the right to be forgotten anymore? Raise your hand if you have any idea what I'm talking about. The other approach those other people. But today I'm going to be talking about the PSD2 and not only about the money and the data. I'll be talking about the social bubbles and you and how we, regulators, view you. So please identify yourself in the bubble, in the bigger or smaller bubble, how you see yourself. I assuming that the institution hosting this event, of course, is the biggest bubble in the room, and they are a credit institution. And nesting in those bubbles are smaller institutions like electronic money institution, payment institution, and those that we'll be focusing on today, but yet very important institutions from the change perspective and what the PSD2 is all about. We'll be talking about the third-party providers and payment initiation service providers and account information service providers. So if a credit institution is at the forefront of the financial market because they have been given this license to print money or transpose fungible resources by the name of deposits into credit and therefore facilitate the juice of the economy, the smaller bubble institutions don't have that right. Electronic money institutions are stripped of that function, yet they can safeguard the funds of the clients according to the safeguarding requirements, which I'm going to skip, but they can do that. Yet a smaller bubble, payment institutions, they are stripped of the function of even holding the funds of the clients, unless it is required to make a payment. So they can keep the funds for the duration of how much is needed to execute the transaction. And what about the other ones? What do? As I said, it's all about them. That's what they do. They superimpose themselves in between the big bubble and the rest of the society, which was not on the slides. They can either initiate a payment on your behalf and your consent, or access the data on your behalf, your data, at the payment service provider. And that other payment service provider, to be fair, can be yourselves, not only the big guys in the room. So the idea is that by doing these things and creating those institutions, the small little bubbles, we're going to be changing the status quo in the sphere of transaction banking, so that those who are sitting on a lot of customer data because of the accounting activity being conducted at the banks, or have a dominant position in the initiation, execution of the payments, or participation in the payment schemes, and having therefore a big bargaining position vis-a-vis the customers, be them physical people or the companies, these guys, they can create more competition. So that's all about the little guys. So what are the main features of those little guys? What do they do? A very interesting thing is that third-party providers are passportable, meaning that once they are given the license, they can operate across all the European Economic Area, which tells you that it is impossible to be a payment initiation service provider or account information service provider if you hold a limited license. And there are no limited licenses being available. But what is the difference between those little bubbles? Because, it's a nested element. So, for example, a credit institution can be basically already providing that service. And, for example, Swedbank has announced and is already providing that account aggregation or account information access service, and can be participating in the payment initiation service if they choose to do so, right? But for those who have no regulatory status and want to enter into that business, what do they have to do? Not that much. So the entry into that market is very easy, you might say. No initial capital requirements. You need insurance policy. I'll talk about that. No need to safeguard the client's funds, because you're not safeguarding the client's funds, and you cannot safeguarding the client's funds. So no need to obtain a bank account, which is a difficulty for some of the electronic money institutions. No requirement on being audited. Very light governance structure. And you can be outsourcing whatever you want to be outsourcing. Basically, it can be a shell structure. Just a license and a business plan, and that's it. Is that right? Not necessarily. It's not an easier way to enter the market. It's an easy, but yet regulated. You must have strong foundations, and those foundations should be strong, shall be strong from day zero. And the most important one is to have a compliance culture built in. Because as the people that presented before me, and one of the elements on the questionnaire was about trust. And for me, that T, we consulted with my colleagues, is not about third-party providers. It's trusted payments providers. You have to be trusted. And who is trusting you or not? It's your customers and the regulator. And how do we trust that? We need to build a culture. And that culture is not only about the ethics, behavior, it's about the IT infrastructure, cybersecurity, and being agile and immune to the risks of the current hostile environment. Okay? That's what we as regulators see third-party providers. So they are creating ability to compete, We created a regime in European Union and European Economic Area by enabling them to compete with the big guys. There's an easy entry, yet it is regulated. And it's not only about transactions and payments. It's about enabling other elements. And yes, we'll be talking about that probably on the panel. The legislation as is, it's as is, but we can and we will be discussing further, and we already see the boundary being pushed to the limit, and some companies coming up with a business plan which is not exactly what has been envisioned for these third-party providers, where all of a sudden the information that you have is being used to price insurance. Not exactly, you know, if you read the legal act, it's not in the preamble of the text what it is for. But it looks interesting. Okay? What did we learn as regulators? The process has not been smooth. We admit that. It has not been smooth, not only because of our fault, not only because of the market participants' fault, one side or the other side. It's a process which we didn't know how it will evolve from the very beginning. So it's the beginning of open banking as we are experiencing it. We don't have that many players. The insurance that I have referring to, one of the requirements for the third-party providers, is very difficult to obtain. At least in Lithuania, there are none of the providers that are providing that. So the licensed entities in Lithuania obtain that insurance from non-Lithuanian insurance companies. And we see that some of the market participants were neglecting the change that was happening. We have had so many events about open banking this, open banking that, open banking consultation by the regulator, Q&A. Still, we have a last-minute syndrome where some of the market participants, for some reason, pretended that we will not see that they are not complying with the inability to continue the business model as they have been doing that for many years. So they pretend that the usual screen scrapping, which is not the safe and trusted element either to initiate or to access the data, is still happening. But on the other hand, we have to admit that those have been asked by the regulation to provide the stable APIs, they did not deliver. Or they did not deliver in a way that was conducive to testing. They have been changing those technical specifications at their own will, so it's very difficult for the other side to prepare. So as I said, there's fault on many multiple ways how to look at those. But it's a process and will be going forward. So what is needed? More events like this, more collaboration, more consultations, and I have to admit, probably more legislative acts. Not by Bank of Lithuania or the Ministry of Finance of Lithuania, European Union, because this is a European phenomenon, and we'll be having to have those being decided at the European level. One thing I forgot, and thanks for the slides, we need more consultations and people involved in the process, not from the, how should I say those, the highest echelons of institutions, but very deep and technical people at the negotiation table between the fintech community, the banks community, and I must admit, regulator itself. Because it boils down to very simple but yet complicated technical details which either enable this model to go forward or not. Okay, enough about complaining and self-bashing. Overall, I think it's a good thing. And we have to make it even better. Why it's a good thing? It is opening up new business opportunities on business models that have not been there before. It's disrupting the current ones, and in the Schumpeterian way, it's a creative destruction. We are destructing something by creating something which is better. Or at least we hope so. New accounting ways. All of a sudden, the biggest bank thinking of providing a tailored accounting service to SMEs. Invoicing. Straight-through processing of invoices where all the invoicing data already is embedded in your payment and passed on to the receiver, which is integrated with your accounting, and therefore you can reduce some costs and also reduce some compliance costs on the one who is executing that transaction for you. From a consumer perspective, better analytics on the way you are perceived in the society, either by your counterparties, the ones extending credit to you, or the supervisors who are trying to understand your business model. And as I was alluding before, everything is not about payments. We are looking for yet more disruptions which are utilizing the open banking model in the areas of insurance, in the area of fund management, in the area of pension funds, distributed finance, or if I would have said DeFi, how many of you would have understood what I said? Maybe we have to think of Payment Services Directive 3. If everything moves into platforms, if credit institution, the big bubble, all of a sudden is not an institution, it's a platform. If payments are not being done on the books of a central bank and all the associated system, but on the distributed ledger, how will those TPPs engage with that system? Okay? So if there is no middleman, how do those service providers survive? Or maybe they don't. So we have to think about that. And while we think about you, we're thinking about ourselves as well. If we have open banking, it's about time to think about open central banking. And what is open central banking? It can mean many things to many people. For us, it means openly providing the data. And instead of pretending that we are the best forecasters of economic activity in the world, or at least in Lithuania, maybe we can be just the ones who are really good at consolidating all available information in one place and allowing you to utilize that data and produce the forecast, which feed into policy making, and policy making feeds into your forecasts. We are thinking about alternative ways of providing safeguarding to those who are safeguarding the funds. If there is a legal requirement to safeguard the funds, but it's impossible to implement that, and there is a legal opportunity to be in that type of business, we see ourselves as the ones which might be providing that service. If due to the reasons which will be skipped today, financial infrastructure providers in the global financial system are de-risking and stepping themselves out of the things that they have been doing for centuries, maybe there is a reason for the public entity to step in. Unless, of course, we find another solution. And I'm talking about disrupting the correspondent banking model, where the correspondent banking has been always provided by private parties. But if the private correspondent banks are stepping out, maybe G7, G20, BIS, Bank of Lithuania can provide a solution, etc., etc. And if you have more ideas, we as a regulator, we are ready to listen. And thank you for having this event. And I'll be taking questions on the panel. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much for your presentation. Shortly we will have a panel discussion, PSD2 challenge accepted, what's next? And one more time we would like to ask for your participation. So throughout the day, there was not so much of a chances for you to ask questions from the presentations, but this is the right time. So you can use the same code and write your questions to the panelists. I would like to invite Gediminas Misevičius to invite his panelists on the stage and have a great round of questions.
Okay, hello everyone. So, okay, so I would like to invite in our discussion Marius Jurgilas, welcome back, member of the board of Bank of Lithuania. Then Oleg Morofeev, head of Open Banking Value Stream. Okay, where are applauses? Evaldas Remeikis, founder and CEO of Neo Finance. Tomas Beniušis, CEO at Baltic Amber Solutions. And Justina Milaszauskienė, Senior Associate at Cobalt. Before we start discussion, I want to feel what kind of audience do we have here. And could you raise your hands if you are from fintech or startup? Okay, maybe 10%. Okay, who are developers, developing the stuff? Okay, there are some. Who are bankers from the bank? Okay, seems half of us. And are there any legal people? Okay, still important topic. And is there anyone who do not belong to any of those categories? Okay, I'm joking. Okay, so before we start, I would like to just clarify that, you know, there is some confusion sometimes between two terms, like PSD2 and open banking. And actually, you know, there's PSD2, APIs, and all this is regulation to open up. You know, we have GDPR that says we cannot share the data, but there is PSD2 that says you banks and payment and electronic money institutions must share the data, of course, in some agreed manner, it's agreed way, and getting permission or consent from the customer. And there is, beyond PSD2, there is lots more areas that we can open up. And actually PSD2 is just the beginning, just inspiration for all open banking, to open the data, as we saw on the screen, to foster future innovations that is coming later on after PSD2. So, but this topic, let's start this topic now about PSD2, because theme of today is PSD2. But later on, of course, you want to elaborate and expand, then you can go. But let's use the term. PSD2 is about this regulatory part, and then open banking about the part that comes later on next, or on individual institution initiatives. So as now PSD2 is in force, actually it is utilized mostly by the ones who were in business already. They have been doing this other ways. And usually it is banks and payments institutions. And what do you think? Who will utilize PSD2? The ones who were in the business already, only those? Or new market players will come? I saw that in Marius' presentation that was examples, good examples actually, about accounting companies, invoicing, credit scoring. But seems that, yeah, in some fields we have already license issued, but they haven't connected yet. In some fields, we do not have so significant amount of layers. So what do you think is, what are other fields or
elaborate more on those fields that were mentioned. What services could be really created based on PSD2 APIs? What value the customer could get? Yeah, question to everyone who wants to start.
So thank you for this very good question. I think it's fair to acknowledge that the statement between the lines of your question that we did not see many activity is correct one. But I wouldn't write it off as a failure or something that we should be concerned about. It's a very difficult process, as I hope I send my message. It's a very technical one and difficult one, which maybe policymakers did not think about. And that's the reason why we are facing these delays, this misalignment of technical systems, and even providers not being really up to speed with the needs from the market. But the potential is still there. And what is the potential? Like the answers that you saw from the audience, we have the front end, the bankers, we have the middlemen, the fintechs, the IT people are always in the back, and the legal guys on the sidelines. And this is the ecosystem, and everyone is involved. And yes, there are always sometimes people somewhere, the regulators. Everywhere. Right. So what can be done? I'm not a product developer. My job is to make sure that your imagination is not limited. And if we identify some limits, and I don't find a justifiable reason why we should have that limitation, I need to weed it out. And that's what the idea of Payment Service Directive 1 and 2 was. Creation of those new institutions which are light in structure but are able to compete. Then the requirement to open up and provide the data combined with the requirement to safeguard the data. So this is the logic of that. And yes, I understood we'll be talking about the open banking later, and the future is for open banking. And open banking means undefined things. We did a consultation, Bank of Lithuania did a consultation of open banking, and it's very undefined. So it's whatever we as society will, and not only the Lithuanian society, will do with it. If we gravitate to the untrusted mode of operation and those who are not present in the room, the consumers, think this is not trusted, it's creating new silos or enabling even bigger aggregation of bargaining into one hands, then we'll shift the focus into other mode of operation. But maybe we'll create new, better, cheaper, more user-friendly ways of interaction.
I think that to elaborate on what Marius said, it is freaking complex. When we start, it's like marriage. They promote you that it's fun, but it's forever. You got married, and then you have the liabilities until the death separates you. So I think that in this perspective, initially we had so many ambitious small TPPs who wanted to get on board. Then they realized what it means to get married, because luckily the people who registered the marriage came before they got married. So the guys realized, I think that when we met with some of you in spring, I think we asked, so what is the biggest challenge to start using PSD2? I think it was January. We just introduced our APIs in production. And the answer from the room was that we never thought that it's so freaking complex from legal point of view, from regulatory point of view. There is a need for insurances, yada, yada, yada. So more or less, it's not that easy to become a financial market player. It is expensive to be one. So my guess, if I would need to put my money on I would say big retailers. Big retailers today have a problem of collecting cash, collecting money, and they have a pain. They have enough muscles. So I would say that these are the guys who will benefit from it most. So this frictionless payments in stores, other service providers who are big enough to swallow the complexity of being married and solving their problem. So I would say that in my books, these will be who will benefit the most. PSD2. Let's see what will be the PSD3, PSD4, and then we might see something else. But currently, after 2 years being in that process, that's my gut feeling.
Market was waiting actually for quite a long time already for PSD2 to come in force, and I am a representative of one of the fintechs who already has been providing the service for more than 1 year. And talking about the fields of activities, what I see at the beginning, we should fulfill the main fields we were waiting for to, as an example, for the payment initiation, especially for to pay utility bills, because for some service providers, the cost price of the payment is very, very important. Also for some other kind of businesses, the payment initiation service also is very important, and businesses were waiting while it happened. Talking about other fields, what's also I do not see at the moment in the market such services like risk assessment, for example, taking the bank accounts and just building the credit score for the customers, and the other main fields in that business which you can, for example, provide some other services using account information service. So what I want to say that at the moment I want to see myself that these the main fields of businesses are fulfilled.
Another big things that my discussion panel colleagues already mentioned, probably want to stress out guys out of the financial area, financial sector, and probably the retailers are the ones that could definitely make something out of that. And definitely, if we're going, I don't know, even further from financial point of view, from technology point of view, maybe even something like direct marketing can get a lot of benefits out of that. You know, if you give a permission to see where you spend your money for one or another retailer, something like that. I mean, it's still very, very new thing, and well, we'll see where this will end up. But basically, I think that this is way more than just a financial sector thing at the time.
Okay.
So Gediminas, coming back to your question, who now utilizes the
Yes,
PSD2?
exactly.
It's now both the financial market participants who are already in the game and those who just start their businesses according to PSD requirements. So, and it goes like a circle, right? The new players, they obtain the data according to the bank financial statements and give back to their clients that are normally, you know, banks or other financial institutions, in order to obtain and have the final product, which is very useful, very user-friendly for the end customer. There is a good term which is associated with the PSD2 directive. it's data democracy. It means that all the customers will now be allowing their data to be provided to any third party. And the scary thought is that now these TPPs could be either, the ones that are just stepping in the financial markets and do not have any experience with the financial reporting, financial regulatory requirements. But of course, there is a challenge, and it's opportunities for everyone. Either it's being like a broker or marketplace or a platform that could be, up and running according to these PSD2 requirements.
Okay, thank you. I'm also looking at the questions from the audience, and I'll start with a short one. Are banks' APIs ready to go live? And actually, yes, we are live, and actually we launched PSD2 APIs in end of January, but of course we had some changes in APIs, and now we have a real utilization of APIs and real services launched. And Evaldas from Neo Finance could confirm that our API is really up and running. Is it true?
You are talking about Swedbank, I
Yes,
think,
Swedbank.
yes. But if to take banks in general, at the moment, not all the banks, unfortunately, are ready to present, let's say, good working APIs.
Okay. And I have another question. Who is responsible for fraud when user, or maybe wanted to say customer, loses money? TPP or bank? Legal, regulator, or Marius or Justina?
Yeah, that is definitely a challenge to have this question answered yes or no. So probably the market will put its own rules on that, and without the specific agreements in place, that would be very difficult. The PSD is rather vague and does not give clear responses to that. So yeah, it's up to regulator, it's up to the legal people to decide on how the market participants, which are in that one circle, will have the liabilities and responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Marius, you want to comment or?
So maybe we should ask those who are providing the insurance to those TPPs, how do they understand the liability? Because these are the most interested parties to understand the limits of liability which they are insuring. And my understanding is that it depends on the specification of the engagement that API provider has with a particular market participant.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I have another question, maybe also a short one. How PSD2 affects licensing process in Lithuania? Any changes or it's still the same?
Can you repeat your question?
How PSD2 affects licensing process in Lithuania? Are there any changes due to PSD2 for the licensing of probably payment institutions they had in mind, or electronic money institutions, or because usually they have this license included? And as you saw, as you wrote and presented in bubbles, that payment institution usually inherits PSD2 licenses same way as electronic money institution. So is it harder process to license currently electronic money institution or payment institution or specialized bank or so when PSD2 came in force?
So of course, we are subject to the same licensing guidelines as we have in European Union. The more functions that those entities that they can elect to have, of course, implies bigger responsibility and compliance requirements that they have to prove to us as the ones granting the license. And the biggest difficulty for us as well, and I assume for the market, is the technical experts that are able to evaluate the operational risk aspects of that business model. So this is the biggest pain for the regulator and regulators across the board, to being able to grow that capacity, and exactly at the same time that the market participants are exactly looking for the same skills. And you can imagine what is happening when the public body is trying to compete for skills with the private sector in exactly the same skill set. So that is our difficulty. And probably you already felt that when the Bank of Lithuania was debating, should we evaluate if the API, since you brought it up, by Swedbank is of good quality or not. You know, it's a very difficult decision to make, but we made it.
Thank you. You made a good decision. Okay, so actually this is question related with the screen scraping as well. Actually, and I see the from audience question is formulated like, how about screen scraping after September 14th? Is it legal for banks which opened APIs? Or from other side also, I would say also, is it legal for TPPs who do not have any account information service provider or payment initiation service provider license to screen scrape in case bank already have PSD2 API, open and working stably and so on? Maybe Justina, you want to answer?
Yeah, it's one of the aims of the PSD2 was to delete the screen scraping activity from the market, and actually it isn't now allowed, and it is not legal after the 14th of September. Those who are still, in the process, as was mentioned in Marius' slides, they are still probably evaluating whether it's worth to a bit amend their business models or start licensing process. So it definitely will take some time for them to be regulated, to comply with the PSD rules.
Okay, but what if TPP has no PSD2 licenses, like neither account information nor payment initiation license, but decides to screen scrape? Is it legal?
As I said, it's not legal.
Not legal this way as well, both ways, like even if you have or not have a license, it's not legal anymore.
Can I ask a question? Is it legal for the bank not to have an operating API past the September deadline?
It was mandatory to have for all the banks, but still some banks, as we heard, do not have it. So of course, as fallback solution is screen scraping. But the question was like, in case we have...
fallback solution is illegal.
Yes. So let's say screen scrape the original internet bank, not the one that was designed as a fallback for PSD2. Yeah? Okay. Evaldas.
I want to add what we see in our company, the biggest challenge and the problem when PSD2 came in force was no transition period for TPPs who were already providing the service. And actually, we have many cases then banks presented the APIs the last day, 14th of September. So how could we legally provide the service using API if it was presented the last day or last minute? So I think that transition period problem it should be some transition period. And what we see in the market, that biggest players like Trustly and others are still providing screen scraping solutions. And maybe they are also doing development and testing of APIs, but they still provide screen scraping solutions.
Marius? We'll have a discussion here if you don't mind. Oleg, so how many versions of the API that Swedbank is providing did you go through from January to today?
Almost every Friday, the European Banking Authority have been answering questions. We had, I think, only with Lithuanian Central Bank, I think we had 7 meetings on topics where it was not clear. PSD2 as a law and as a technical standard is so freaking vague. So you had to understand and interpret it. Each interpretation created an iteration and a version of it, making it closer to what we have it today. So multiple.
So as a technical person and understanding the concept of, kind of a testing environment and things like that, if your testing environment is changing every Friday, how do you comply with the requirement to shift your practice from screen scraping to utilizing the API? I'm not putting you on the spot, I'm just saying this is a very difficult situation for everyone. There's a hard deadline. It's very difficult for those who are obliged to provide that service, to the good quality. And if you don't, then I tell you that it's not a good quality. For you, it means reading the legal acts and really making sure it's of good quality, unless you go to the fallback solution, and no one wants to do that. But for the market participants who are in the business of screen scraping, have been and are willing and really looking forward to integrate with you how to do that. So, as I said in my slides, it's a process. So let's be patient with each other and not create problems beyond what we already have. And maybe, as I said, more dialogue is needed, and not looking for legal acts which will tell you need to do that, lock your testing environment for at least 3 months and give them to prepare.
But I think that Evaldis actually already answered the question, that there was no transition period. And this was like super weird situation when European Banking Authority had a huge meeting with the biggest TPPs and banks. I think it was July. And there was a clear request from TPPs. They pointed out that there are issues, the multiple issues, certificates, all the reasonable issues. And it's still unclear for me why European Banking Authority did not give a grace period. So maybe you have.
Yes, European Banking Authority is not a legislator. Okay, they are the entity or supranational entity which ensures equal treatment of rules. The ones that were able to do that were preparing for election. And this is the difficulty of a political cycle, and sometimes technical issues are not being dealt with.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this leads to the question actually maybe to Evaldis and Thomas, how easy or how hard is to utilize PSD2 APIs, and maybe to Oleg as well, because we are also utilizing some other banks' APIs.
Well, actually, I wanted to add 2 cents to that discussion that guys were having. I mean, it was like somewhere around June, July, and people all around us were not believing that this will gonna happen. I mean, everybody was, thinking, okay, they will postpone. Okay, there are too many things that are not clear. Okay, there's a misunderstanding between the technical parts and the legal parts, etc. They will postpone. And here we have September. So probably this was the biggest issue actually from technology point of view. You know, the APIs, when you have a clear specs, I mean, it's not a big deal. Yes, you have things to do. Yes, you have to implement. Yes, you have to, spend some time on that. But basically, where especially us spent vast majority of that PSD2 project was how to interpret one or another thing, how to proceed on one or another statement, whether it's legal, whether it's technical. If it's technical, whether it's, good or bad according to compliance, that was the vast majority of the thing. And this is quite tricky. And actually, we're very thankful because we have, very honest help from the Bank of Lithuania. And we met a couple of times and discussed what to do in this and that situation. whether the fallback scenario is legal or not, what we can call the fallback scenario if our client doesn't have the internet banking. What's the fallback scenario for that? Should we create? I mean, all the other aspects except technical were tricky ones. Technical part was okay.
Okay. Avaldas, your case, technical?
Technical part of APIs, then they were presented. It's not so hard to actually integrate. The problem was and still is that we are the first ones actually who has been testing solutions from actually all the banks in Lithuania. So we helped for the banks to find all the bugs and to fix all the bugs, and we didn't get any salary for that. So. So the problem is that the APIs were not properly tested. And this testing and finding bugs takes the huge actually amount of time, not the integration itself. The good thing is that it will finish soon, I hope.
Okay, then there is, Oleg already talked that there is kind of a standard in the market, but actually it is not so good. Actually, APIs harmonized, but actually it's not they are not completely same. So clearly there is a market for aggregators, for the ones who aggregate APIs and then the sell services towards institutions who need to run the service. And there are different ones and quite many of them. Do you think it's too crowded there or it's not enough? What is your view about those aggregators? If someone from the audience wants to create this aggregator, there is a room for that or not? Aggregator of multiple bank APIs into one to have it easy utilization.
Not creating one. I'm listening and I'm thinking, why the hell we have so many APIs? Why not this side of the room, they agree, they commission a developer to develop one API and scale it across this side of the room. That side of the room, they ask the developers, maybe the same ones for the simplicity, to develop the screen scraping, transition into the usage of APIs. Why this difficulty? What is the reason?
What is the reason why people obey traffic regulations in Italy differently than in Lithuania? Pretty much the same reason. The technical backgrounds, the business processes behind that, how customer is identified, connected through the system. I'll give you one example. It's a technical one, but you'll understand it now. So in order to perform an international payment from Lithuania to Japan, in one bank, you do the international payment and the currency, that's how the back end works. The currency conversion happens on the fly and then you have yens at the other end. In another bank, that's how the bank is built. First of all, they convert it to the yens, they put it in another account, and then they send it to Japan. So that's the reason that you cannot build the very strict technical standard, otherwise there will be lots of a pain for the guys who will need to implement it, like much more pain than we had at the moment. But I think that we will come there. It's just several iterations.
So this is saying that there are different ways of doing the same thing. If they are different, they should be different in terms of efficiency, costs, and user friendliness. If Those, let's say all of us have different business models, and of course, hers is the best. It's the red one. And we disagree that we should be red because we like blue. But the customers will choose red because it's the best. So even though we disagree, the market will gravitate to using that type of business model. So why not prevent that pain for ourselves and agree? We all have to change into red.
That's pretty easy, but the answer is pretty easy actually, is that customer wants to send his money to Japan. He doesn't freaking care where the conversion happens. This is the old legacy behind. So basically what you're suggesting, Marius, is that let's solve all the core banking systems in Europe and sell them one. Actually, that's a good idea.
So that you understand that I'm not just talking about imaginable things. There is a country by the name of Portugal. Besides football, they have a somewhat efficient banking system where all the development for the banking sector or the financial system is being done by the delegated entity. If here comes the European Union and says, you need to implement this, all the institution says, you need to implement this. And everyone is being built according to their market size, but no one is developing their solutions by I do it striped, you do it green, and she does it red. And then we think how to, what's the word you used? Aggregate it?
Aggregate.
Aggregate.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Okay, see quite many questions again on screen scraping, and actually, from those ones, what's wrong with the screen scraping? I give consent to PP to automate my work on my behalf, but actually, when you understand how it works, it's actually, even if you have agreement, technically TPP can get much more data than you gave access to. So, and perform even some actions on behalf of you if that action doesn't require some strong customer authentication. But the question another is about, as screen scraping for PSD2 scope is forbidden, what's about beyond PSD2, screen scraping of some other, what about screen scraping beyond PSD2 scope? That is the question. Maybe legal and regulatory.
Well, it all depends on what kind of data, right? It's on the stake.
Yeah, but let's say not account data, not payment initiation, something beyond. It could be what kind of services he has, what kind of loan he has, insurance, or whatever data that could be found on his internet bank, beyond accounts, statement reports, and payments.
Can I help?
Yeah.
So I'm assuming at least majority of the people here know of a company, I'm not going to say the name, but which started scraping the data on life insurance policies, right? It's a very interesting business model. The idea is, what is the idea? If you have already granted an insurance policy, a big respectable institution, you have done the due diligence, already evaluated, priced, and distributed, marketed, reinsured, created the model through the big corporate culture of a respectable institution, which you are. Here I come with super light structure. I take that customer from you and offer them a life insurance policy, but no one would believe me. But what I do, I reinsure it with the biggest reinsurance company in the world owned by Warren Buffett. By doing that, I cut like 3 layers, and that's what the TPPs are about. It's about cutting the middleman. What's the problem? They are screen scraping the data or pretending to utilize PSD2 not for what it is intended for. How should we view that? From a strict legal perspective, they're doing something what the legal act allows them and tells you to open up, it's not for that purpose. From a legislator's perspective, what's wrong? What is wrong? So there needs to be some kind of a damage theory that, you know, they are stepping into my territory, or, you know, utilizing my knowledge, which, you know, they didn't have. I used money, so that needs to be built in. But my gut feeling is that if there will be legal battles on that particular example, you know, scale it to multiple industries, legislators will support it, because they don't like the middleman. The middleman serves no purpose unless he has a purpose of managing something, risks. So that's my view.
Okay, Justina, you have
If
same
I-
view, or to comment on this?
Yeah, and it all comes to the benefit of the consumer, right?
Yep.
If the consumer at the end of this, avoiding the middleman, gets the better price, get a quality products, you know, does not give any harm to the third-party provider, which is, for example, the bank itself, keeping the data, and adding that the consumer itself gives consent to obtaining this kind of data. I think that there would be a lot of arguments to say that this kind of business model does not infringe, you know, the legal requirements and the interests of the consumers.
If I may, just one thing. Marius, do you like avocados? You know how it's very painful to choose a good avocado in the retail store right now, right? They're all either very hard or too squishy. So what you do, you spend around 15 minutes in choosing the right avocados, and then the guy comes in and he picks from your basket, and then he goes. That's it. So that's more or less
Yeah,
what
good
I
example.
think of picking the clients that have been, the due diligence have been done. Well, that's what Mario said. I understand that there is a huge advantage for the guy that's going to sell that avocado to the end customer. But then I guess your time, which is very valuable as we know, should somehow also be compensated on that, because he have invested that time in picking the really good avocados, damn it.
Yeah, then the question about the licenses. Let's say in Lithuania, Bank of Lithuania issued 6 payment initiation licenses and 5 account information licenses. Actually 8 market players in total that license in Lithuania. If I compare those numbers with the electronic money institutions and payment institutions that we have in Lithuania, it's quite low number if we look on European perspective. You know, in electronic money institutions and payment institutions were kind of second or third in Europe. But with these, it's not so popular. So what do you think could be the reasons of that? No traction by fintechs, or some hard regulation, or Justina and Marius, maybe you could comment best.
I think there are several reasons on that. The first one being that PSD2 legislation and all the other legal acts that come together with PSD2 package is quite complex, and market participants, they do actually need a lot of time to understand. They need to hire some advisors to help with IT, with the compliance, with the legal stuff. You know, that could be one of the reasons. The second reason is that the deadline for opening the testing environments for the banks was the 14th of March, if I'm correct. But most of them either failed to do that, or, you know, there was some kind of obstacles changing the environments each week. And then again, those who wanted to get the license and want to make sure that they do have solid business plan to send to the regulator, and the regulator, of course, needs to see the solid and trustworthy business models of those market players who just want to become the licensed entities. So the failure caused some delays, and I think, yeah, those are still undergoing and trying to amend their business models in order to file for the licensing. And yeah, actually, I saw the survey that 64% of all account information and payment initiation service providers are now registered in UK. If I'm not wrong, and please correct me if I'm, the second is Sweden, and the third is Lithuania, actually. So, of course, most of the market players still move to UK, but maybe Brexit could change the situation.
Marius, do you have something to share? What is your opinion? Why?
Yes. I'm not that surprised. I'm surprised by the question. Before the PSD2, there was PSD1. What did PSD1 created? It said, we are creating a whole new set of institutions called payment service providers. Payment institutions and electronic money institutions. And the hope was that that will somehow compete with the before present market players in that area. The first payment institution to obtain a license was in Belgium in 2013. And you know some other famous names, so I will not gonna point out the names. But then the legislators started asking the question, none of those institutions are gaining any traction in terms of a market share, importance, facilitating the European causes of a single payments area. At the same time, the single European payments area was being introduced, and nothing is happening. And in the same mode of thinking, legislators were thinking, what is wrong? Yeah, they consulted the market, and the market, this side of the room, said, these guys are not opening up. They're not giving us access. Unlike them, we have no access to data, accounts, and it's unfair. Here comes PSD2, says, you must open up. They have the right. Fairness, the avocado, yes, has to be fair, for you, good quality. If not good quality, go back to training, the fallback option. For them, all the technical reasons to make sure that they trust their customers trust them, and if they don't, you know, I'll just tell that a company is not dealing with the data in a safe fashion, next day they're out of business. So, trust. Your comment is only just 8 companies in a span of 6 months? I would say 8 companies in 6 months with no APIs present.
So license issuing started this year only?
License,
this account information and payment initiation.
When was it available? Last year fall, if I'm correct. Yes.
Okay, a year then, around, yeah.
So in a year.
Okay.
So we
Not so bad.
we still have time, and my feeling is that, as I said, the mode of legislators will be going in the same direction. The avocado pickers, they have to be compensated. Yeah, they have the rights to exist, but they cannot be the only ones in the market doing that. Yes. And if we see that is not changing, there will be more changes.
Okay, thanks. Yep, Evaldis?
Hello. I would like also to stress my point of view. I think that for fintechs, they do not see the business model for the future and the competitive advantage. What I am gonna be exceptional if I build my electronic money institution and becoming TPP, what kind of services I'm going to provide and what exception and what competitive advantages I will provide in the market. Because what I think that if to compete with the same level of services, these services like payment initiation service or account information service might become like a commodity. So we'll compete, the competition will be extremely tough and will compete on the 1 cent level, and the pricing could go down, for example, to 1 or 2 cents. So what I'll create exceptional to sell my services at the higher price. I think it also could be a reason why not so many, not only in Lithuania, but in Europe, TPPs are at the moment already existing.
Okay, I have another question from audience. Swedbank is ready to share the data, but are customers ready to share their data? Probably the question is kind of to give a consent. Maybe it's probably more account information service provider. So Oleg, maybe from experience by adding SEB accounts, customers adding it, and we have numbers that the ones who are adding, but actually it's bank-to-bank communication. But probably it's a question how customers will be able, will give a consent to TPPs to share the data of their account balance, of their statement report, and so on. So is it could be frightening stuff for some customers actually?
The whole thing is frightening because currently some people perceive, since if you're not into this thing, and this is like very technical thing, very complicated thing, if you're not into this thing, that you may even think that, okay, now everyone can take my data. So that's one of the perceptions in the market. But I mean, if we throw it away and if we'll still look at the practical side, the worst thing that works against us is no standard or no clarity in consent, on consent side. Because we will end up either with very ambiguous concepts, which will lead us to the Cambridge Analytica cases, or we will lead to a very long, like many pages consents, which will lead us to the Cambridge Analytica cases because nobody reads them. So more or less, until we as a market have solved it, because bank cannot solve it, one TPP cannot solve it. And I don't know if regulator can solve it because Marius works for Lithuanian regulator and this is a European level initiative. Still, we can, I mean, I think that this is something that we should start structuring because I think that if we build some sort of a market practice, that will start working in the rest of the world. So Europe and the world. So from my point of view, the biggest showstopper and the biggest reason why customers will be afraid is that they will not even understand what they're doing, and those who don't care, they will anyway share it. And then we just need to wait for another Cambridge Analytica thing. So
I want to add a few things as well, because customers probably will be quite happy to share their data once we understand what exactly they are sharing. And it's a fact that definitely, probably from technical point of view, yeah, we have to agree on what we are sharing and what not. From legal point of view, everybody should be on the same page what exactly we are sharing. Even right now, I mean, there was a discussion about screen scraping when we don't know what exactly is being screen scraped. It's close to that for PSD2 as well, because let's say if you give a consent for your account or accounts, well, some interpret it that you share all of your accounts, and some, you know, gives you permission to grant access only to, let's say, one particular account. So since we have those sort of discussions how to read the same text, I believe customers will not be as happy to share their data. Well, at least that's how I think is that.
Okay. yeah, with some more questions, screen screaming, but I don't want to return back to this topic. We checked this quite much already. And okay, what other questions? Will be any sanctions for the banks which did not introduce APIs until the deadline, which already passed?
Yes.
Okay, clear, thanks. Very fast answer. Okay. Somehow 20 minutes, no more new questions, so you can be more active and now submit some questions. I'm really refreshing it and to your opinion, how certification process could be improved? Actually, certification, it's I don't get it. Is it getting the license or getting technical certificates? But actually, who asked? Maybe could elaborate more if they dare to show up. Okay, then yeah. I will ask the question, in general, will PSD2 be a revolution for innovations in the market, or it will be just evolution or harmonization of payment services? Like, could you rate from 1 to 10? 1 is minor impact and 10 is a major revolution. Yes, for all of you, I want to hear numbers and some short comment.
5.
Okay, would you comment why 5 or?
I think it's already we can say with certainty it's not 10 because we already spent so much time talking about the reasons why it's technically difficult, not legally clear, not enough time, and many other reasons. Red, blue, and business models, no business model, difference in business models, no money, a lot of money, expenditure, no future. So many reasons why it's not 10.
Okay.
Why it's not 1? Because it definitely leads to unification of standards, push to consolidation, aggregation, and other reasons why to do that. And therefore, it's somewhere in the middle, 5.
Okay. Oleg?
I enjoy being with Marius on the panel. We always have interesting discussions, but this time I will agree with him. It's 5. And the reason why it's not 10 is that I fully support what Marius said. It's just needs more time and steps. And why it's not 1, I think that this is what Lotta said in the very beginning, and that was very right. That's the only way for European Union to stay competitive in the financial market. So this is a too big thing to fail. So I really believe that it will not be 1 as well.
Aldis?
The question was about the future. So in 5 years perspective after we together with the banks will improve everything including the customer experience when providing these services, I would say 8 points. 8 points, yeah, because still we can do many things across PSD2. I believe that it will more on the revolution side.
I think how we treat the same things, because of the fact that we have many things to do, I'd say it's like 3 at best. I mean, it's just the beginning. Come on, I mean, we have to open so many data. We have to establish so many business models. I mean, I think as a fact, I think it's awesome. I mean, we have to go that way. As a stage where we are, I mean, it's just the beginning, I'd say. It's 3 right now, maybe 10 later on.
Okay. Kristina?
I should say strong 4. Also agree with the colleagues who are stating that it's a long way to go and still a lot of things to do. Maybe PSD3 could revise some things, and detailize, harmonize standards and procedures currently under PSD2 we have. And it's not one, because these new market players, together partnering with the big banks, big fintech companies, could create a lot of value for the customers. These partnerships could go away, and long way to go, that could cause really good new startups and new ideas.
Okay, so some next question is more for fun. And as a next step will it be PSD3, like still in payments area, some improvements, or it will be something else, some other areas touched? So maybe each of you have some questions, or what is needed mostly for the market? What next steps after PSD2?
I think next to payments, we have to talk about user data, and it's the huge thing. I mean, it's a huge area. And what's PSD3 or then PSD 2.1 to something? It's, for me, it's to make it available way more things for the third-party providers just to create new brilliant solutions. Because I mean, it's a really good place to disrupt that market, because it will be just for the good for all of us as a customers, not as employees of one or another company. So it's just about the amount of data, amount of information that can be used for good purposes.
Okay.
As I mentioned, there are a lot of areas where we need more clarity on, so maybe PSD3 could solve these. But still, I'm a believer in the market, despite the fact that I'm a lawyer, but I believe that innovation, and especially in the payments area, could not be somehow suspended due to the fact of the new regulations, the time which is spent for discussion on new regulations, implementation on them, etc.
Oleg, Evaldas, Marius, you have what's next, like PSD3 or something else, or what is needed for the market? Maybe Evaldas can say, or what you see from regulation point of view, you could say.
I think that PSD3, in the current moment, I would like that PSD2 would show all the possibilities, business models, and working perfectly, and so on. And for me, for example, is too early to think what can be next. Of course, I understand all the future examples of open data. There is even open data project at the Payment Council in Lithuania, and market participants are discussing the ideas, what next, what are the data to open for users. Like, for example, data from telecoms, data from electricity providers, and so on. They have plenty of users' data, and we can deploy that data. For example, just as an example, if I want to provide the mortgage loan for a user, I can to retrieve the account of that user from the bank. I can log into registry centers to get the pricing on the house the user can buy, and so many of interesting things are awaiting us in the future. But for a moment, let's finish that PSD2.
Okay.
There are two answers, the short one and the long one. The short one is very simple. With payments, we will improve the user experience. It will be easier to do the payments, so all the payment providers will be happy. Customers will be super happy. With data, with account statements, it's also easy. We talked about it. It's about customer consent, so customer would gain a trust that where he can share the data? That's a short answer. Long answer, again, I'll do the parallel with marriage. Just a few months ago, you've been happy couple students that were dating, cinemas and everything, and restaurants, so it was all fun. You got married, PSD2 came in force, you became a regulated market player. You got kids, so you have AML responsibilities now on top. Your mother-in-law moved in, GDPR kicks in on you. So what I'm trying to say is that it is much more complicated picture. It's becoming, every day is becoming much more complicated to run a financial service business, either as a TPP or as a bank. So it's a paradox. From one hand, we're liberalizing the market, making it more liberal for many players. On the other hand, we're killing the entrance criteria for new players. The later you get into a race, the more difficult for you to get in, because you have a kids, you have mother-in-law, and try doing your sports now with all your free time that you have, that you were dreaming of when you were just a happy couple of students. So that's what I think what is actually happening right now. And it's very interesting where the financial market will, how it will develop with a couple of years.
I really liked your example of a marriage. I'm not a philosopher or an expert in that area, but I feel, yes, but I feel that the institution of marriage as such is being challenged by the fact that we already know that our kids will be living for 50% of our kids will be living to the age of 100 years old later. Imagine being in that institution for 70 plus years. You understand what I'm saying, right? Maybe the business model is changing. And I also like the other part of your statement, which is, the liberalization. So I don't know what you guys, but we are building central bank digital currency, where the concept of a credit institution, the big bubble, is really challenged. And maybe TPP, be it open, not open, will not have a role. So that remains to be seen. So, of course, that was a joke. But very seriously, big central banks around the world are really focusing on how to respond to the pressure from the society on providing better infrastructure services. And the basic infrastructure service in finance is payments. And if we don't, here comes e-wallet Calibra, and they will be serving you e-tokens by the name of Libra. What is our response? European Union is really obsessed right now, and I'm serious here, by thinking about the future European payment strategy. Everyone is on high alert. The most highest level meetings are happening as we speak. And the next item on the agenda, and I'll be joking here, is to create a European logo.
European, sorry?
European logo for the payment scheme.
Aha.
To have a European identity. If you have ideas, please come forward.
Okay, so time is up, and actually, really, we see that it's not easy for banks, not easy for TPPs actually to play in that field, but it's really clear that that customer at the end really wins. So, thank you, panelists. Applause. Giving word to you.
So on Rocket behalf, we would like to thank you all for coming here, and we hope that you do not rush through the door. We were joking on the side that probably in the region today we are the most concentrated community of the people who really think of PSD2 implementation and how to get the most value of it. So make sure you use the network and you stay sometime after the event to exchange the contacts. So thank you very much for all the panelists, and Smile for getting with us, going straight on on some social media channels. Thank you everybody who shared your presentations and insights. Please follow us and attend similar events like this. If you feel like sharing some of their information you've heard today, maybe you have some content to add up, please contact us and we'll be happy to put you on the stage and exchange this knowledge. So thank you one more time, round of applause, and enjoy the drinks. Also, a short technical announcement for PSD2 project team from Swedbank. Please gather around this stage for some technical information. Thank you.